Hey, what we did yesterday, we can do better tomorrow. Wanting to deliver something that hasn't been delivered before in the market, wanting to provide a better experience for our clients.
So, welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast, and we're excited. Today we have Nathan Marsala on with us. Welcome, Nathan.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Excited to have you. So, Nathan's president and founder of Bison Group, and we've known each other for about a year now. In fact, you were just in town here in Phoenix. Came down to the Net Zero grand opening, and so we had a little bit of time to take you around a couple projects and revisit.
Yeah, definitely. They were great projects. It was really fun to be there and to see the things that you guys are doing over at AFT.
Well, likewise, and I'm excited to get in this conversation, Nathan, because I mean you're just doing some amazing things. I know that some of my staff recognize you right away because they're like, "We've seen Nathan's videos on Instagram." He's been spending a lot of time on Instagram and just building the portfolio you have. So let me ask you this: how can builders stop allowing ourselves to be viewed as a commodity?
That's a great question. I think the number one thing we need to stop doing is, and this sounds probably with a lot of pushback coming our way, stop giving free bids. And that's for whatever reason, there are a lot of memes. There's a lot of things I even see on social. I saw some stuff last night on how to hack your contractor and how to get the best price out of them and really talk them down. And it's interesting that for whatever reason, whether it's the real estate agents or the flippers or homeowners, they just feel like we are a commodity and that all builders are created equal and the only difference is the price. And that's absolutely not true. There couldn't be a bigger myth in the market that three bids tell you what the actual marketplace and value should be. So the big thing for us is explaining to our clients what that value is, why builder A is different than builder B, why the Bison Group is going to do something different than someone else that they might be talking to, and the importance of pre-construction services and bringing your builder in early and often and finding the right fit for your project, because we're not created equal and the customer service experience is different. The systems that we use are different. The trades, we might both have framers, but one's going to frame to a different level of craftsmanship and quality than another. And go ahead.
No, it's interesting if I interrupt you there, Nathan, because I was making some notes and I want to come back to the free bids and bringing your builder in. I think there's a lot of content there we can discuss, but you brought something up that triggered, especially early in my career, and you talked about, flippers and investors. And it's a little bit of a sensitive subject. And the reason I say that is because in my experience, and this isn't for all, so if we have any flippers or investors listening, but in my experience, predominantly, there's no doubt that clientele views builders as a commodity, right? They essentially, I'm trying to think how to say this in a way that's not offensive, but essentially, you're not really a partner in the project. I mean, they're going to demand a lot from you. They're going to drive you, and what's really tough is it's all about numbers, right? It's quality, brand, reputation. None of that typically plays a role, and I say typically because for the meat of this, I mean, you may have some really high end projects at a high level that they're looking to have a builder because of the name and they're going to build to a different clientele. But the majority of investors, flippers, that's not the case. And it can be really tough. And I've had some, fortunately seen some red flags in the past, especially early on when you're trying to get business and some investors reach out and some of their terms were just insane, right? That they demanded. I'm like, if you want me to build at this time frame and this cost, why don't I just do it myself and then I make the upside? You know what I mean?
Yep. No, absolutely. And that's a big part of it. And I mean, even some of the DIY type of things have really made it seem like building is a very simple, easy, uncomplicated task that anybody can do. It's been popular on TV shows. It's been popular on the social of look at my DIY project. And there's nothing wrong with DIY. I think it's just different depending on the complexity and the project you get into. We both work in commercial and custom residential spaces. And there's nothing simple or uncomplex about all of those. And every project's different. Everything's always changing. So for us, the big thing that we're trying to do either with social media, with talking with our architects, with our design teams that we like to work with, is educating them as well as our client base on here's why a builder is important and valuable and why we are not a commodity and that we're not all created equal. There are a lot of great quality builders out there, and there's a lot that just they're a means to an end for other people, and that's fine. That's what they want to build their business model on, but that's not our market, and that's not what we work towards. So we want to explain to clients why a builder is important, why they're valuable, and why they should be basing their decisions on something other than just what the bottom line cost is.
Well, it's interesting because it's one thing, for you and I, builder, and we can say, there's nothing more expensive than a cheap bid, and we understand really the difficulty and challenges of our job and career and what we manage. The other thing is education. You mentioned this. We have to educate the client. They have to understand. I know that specifically on your channel, on your social media, you've been really big just explaining something as simple as bid and estimate, right?
Yeah.
That clients don't understand. So walk through kind of the purpose of that. I'm sure maybe there's some history there, but I know this is a topic that many clients may not fully understand as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of terminology that gets thrown around, and people hear the words and they think they know and understand the words, but they really do mean various different things. And it's important for us as a builder to make sure we at least clarify with our client what the terms mean and what their understanding is. And so that's the whole purpose of our whiteboard Wednesdays that we've been kind of throwing out there on our Instagram. And the bid versus the estimate, one is a much harder number. It's firm, it's concrete. We know all the details. And the bid it's $100. It's not 99, it's not 101. It's $100. That's what the bid says. An estimate, you got to look at that more as a budget. It's going to be, we think and we hope, pretty darn close to 100, but it could be 101, 102, and it could be 98, and it could be 97. But on the budget side, the overage kind of like on a cost plus model goes more towards the client, and the savings goes towards the client as well. And a straight up bid, when you know all the details and it's a hard, firm number bid, there's a risk that both parties take, right? The contractor says, I'm going to do it for $100 no matter what, even if it costs them 120. But if it costs them 70, that client just paid an extra 30. And helping clients understand the difference between a bid, a budget, that estimate, and what that means when they're looking at a proposal is night and day. Because some guys will put that out there and say, it was a budget or it was an estimate. And they never explain the difference between their client, between a bid and an estimate. And then the client feels like they got burned. And then our whole industry gets a bad rap because, somebody didn't want to take the time to explain a definition.
So with that definition, I mean, especially as you broke that down, Nathan, which I feel is really clear, how do you differentiate that? Or maybe I say it this way. At what stage of the process are you communicating this with your clients, whether commercial or residential, to fully understand, the difference of estimate and budget, when they're going to be given either, and how that plays into the overall success and costing of the job?
Day one, we have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with a potential new client, right? Design team asked if we'd be interested in it. We said, sure, we'll come take a look, but they asked for a bid. And we said, that's not how we operate. Number one, these are the minimum requirements of our project. You have to have a design team. You have to have drawings and documents, and we have to meet you. We have to walk with you. We have to explain our process. We explained it to them in writing, and we need to get a feel for the project, make sure it's a good fit all the way around, personalities, and discuss budgets first. And that then we can go into pre-construction and talk about pre-construction agreements and how that works. So we'll spend some time with a future client right up front, but we explain everything to them. Typically, we just ran out of our little booklets, but we have a spiral bound booklet that we've had printed up that we give to every client. It talks about our system and our process, all the way down to these are the hours of communication that are acceptable to us. I mean, you're going to text me at 9:00 on a Friday night. Happens all the time with just about every client. It's unavoidable. Please don't expect a response till Monday morning unless, there's a broken pipe and the water's coming in. Like, we have a life too. But like all of that and the process and the steps of where your budgets, we're going to give you a minimum of 3 line item full breakdown budgets during the course of pre-construction. We're going to give you your conceptual upfront ROM. It's broken down by line item. Then we're going to get to a preliminary budget, and then we're going to get to the project budget. And those evolve as the drawings and the details evolve. And that's all explained. There's samples of all of these for our clients day one. And that's something that, why we can't be viewed as a commodity, because that's not something every builder in our market does.
So let me ask you this. When you say that document for the hours of communication, walk us through that. I think this is something that, I've tried to do in the sales process, but again, people forget, people are busy, they're in their careers, right? So they're going to ping my people all different hours. I have a tendency to do that. I've been reprimanded. I need to be careful and be, that work-life balance for my people. How are you communicating this with the client in the sales process? What's that document look like? You mentioned that unless emergency, but how do you define that?
Uh, well, I probably need to refine the definition of an emergency because what's an emergency to us and to other people is can be very very different. We do put this up front in our kind of our pre-construction documentation when we first meet. It is in writing, and we make sure we review that page. And we say, look, this is the hours of communication Monday through Friday, and you can reach out to us as early as 7 a.m. and at 6 p.m. Please expect that we're not going to respond. It doesn't mean we didn't get your message, but we're probably not going to answer the phone. We're not going to respond to the email or the text. And I mean, I've been better at when I do work on the weekends because I have a tendency to do that a lot. Now scheduling my emails to go out Monday morning. So I'm not setting the standard. But that's the other thing. If our team or myself respond to that client, we've just changed the precedent. Now they know that on a Friday night or on a Sunday afternoon, they can get a hold of us and I'm going to respond, or, Dwayne on my team is going to respond, or Anthony might, ping back. We've made it clear to our guys, like, you don't have to respond. It's absolutely not necessary. We do, and the hard part for us is we do a lot of high-end commercial tenant improvements. So we have off-hours work and communication that is just required because of the nature of the job in an occupied space. And it's hard sometimes to mix those two, but we have to have that conversation. Not only is it in writing, we have the conversation in person with our client. Most of them understand that, look, we understand that your work hours and our work hours are about the same. But when you want to talk about your project, you're at work and we're at home. And we try to find the times that work. So a lot of times, like our weekly meetings with our clients on our residential projects, they're during a lunch hour, they're a late afternoon, or they're an early morning. So it kind of works in and around their work days. We ask them to make a little bit of sacrifice on their work day so we can make sure we have time with our family, because that's an easy boundary to cross. And I've been guilty of it far too often. I've got a fantastic wife that has literally grabbed me and pulled me aside and just said, no, like, we're here too. And that's been huge and game changer for how we changed our perspective. I mean, that's where that whole, like, here's the hours came from.
It's a lot easier said than done. It's funny you say that, because I think there's a few times, like yesterday was Sunday. And so I had a couple work calls and my wife's like, what's the deal? And, I have to be careful that, part of us, we're obsessed with, our, company, with the brand, with everything. And, it's our baby, per se, and we have to be careful that those lines aren't crossed, especially with employees and customers, and that we keep some clear definition. I think that's great advice, Nathan. What's interesting is you made a comment earlier. You had talked about that in that bid estimate stage, it's really important for you to meet the client. And the reason I want to focus on that is because in the past, all of us understand that there may be a signature architect we want to work with, commercial, residential. Mm-hmm. And it's not as common, but sometimes the architect is running, essentially a construction manager of the project, maybe, and the designer to some aspect. And they'll reach out to you, Nathan, or myself, and say, okay, Brad or Nathan, Bison Group, AFD, we want you guys to bid on this project. And some of us may look at this and say, we really want to work with this architect. We'll give a bid, we're going to interview, but we haven't even met the client. And I've learned later in my career that it's really important to push back and say, I need to meet the client first. I need to interview them, and this really goes back to, this client may not be a partner. This project may not be right. And I won't know that until I meet that, that individual themselves.
No, that's absolutely true. We've had projects that we got super excited about and started going down that road and realized personalities weren't a good fit. It's not that we weren't capable. It's not that they weren't excited for their project, but the personalities just clashed for whatever reason. And it was very apparent pretty quickly that that's how it was going to be. And it was a tougher project than it needed to be. I mean, at the end, everybody was happy. And we've had projects where we've been like, yeah, this is going to be really cool. It's going to be a feather in our cap. It's the right area of town that we want to be seen at, and signage, and it checks all the boxes. And you start interacting with that person. You're like, yeah, not worth it. And, you walk away. So we've definitely learned that lesson a hard way. And now it's important for us to get the fill. And it's harder when it's the out-of-state clients where, you're trying to do it over a phone call or a Zoom call. I think you can get a pretty good idea of who a person is via Zoom, or at least there's some video aspect. But I mean, that's a minimum, even if we can't get face-to-face up front, that there's at least a Zoom call of some sort.
Well, and part of that, as you mentioned, I mean, you said this early on that, getting away from the commodity, we have to not be giving away free bids, right? We have to value our time in the project, and there's an education to that. How have you educated your clientele, to understand that, hey, again, they may see online, I need 3 contractors, I need 3 bids, I have to go, why do I need to involve my builder early in the process? How have you helped revolutionize maybe that aspect of the industry?
Um, yeah, the best way I can say that we've been able to do that is we've had some great architects and interior designers that we've worked with that have had successful projects because the builder was on early. And so they've been a great advocate in wanting to go down that path. And that's just, yeah, they're not hearing it from me, the builder that wants them to sign a pre-construction agreement, but they're hearing it from their designer and the architect that they selected outside of that. And the big thing that we explain to them is here are the deliverables, right? We give them actual samples of what the deliverable products are. We're going to work on your project strategy. We're going to work on long lead time items and identify those early and often, because in today's climate, things have gotten better, but they're not where they were with everything. We still have some window packages and manufacturers that are out 15, 16 weeks. And you've been in the game long enough, Brad. You remember you could frame a house and then take your rough opening from your framing and order your windows and have them in time before you hung.
Yeah.
Like those days are long, long, long gone. At least haven't come back to that point yet. So we're looking at products that we might need to order before our building permit has even been applied for. And if you're too far in the game, you're going to lose time and money on the back end. So that's been a big part of it. We've also talked to them about budgets. We'll go through, we use a takeoff software and we quantify everything, even on an early schematic. And we have those conversations. We're in the design meetings. And then we start putting line items like this is the allowance per square foot for tile material. This is the allowance per slab. And this is how many slabs you're roughly going to need. Now, when you're sitting down making design decisions with your architect and interior designer, you know whether you're going over or under your budget pretty quick right off the bat. If you want to spend more, great. If you want to spend less, you know how to do that. And then we're here to help through that, through the constructability. We've got a project coming up that's not going to break ground until June, but we have to have percolation tests for the water. We have to plan on where septic's going to go because we're just too far away. There's no sewer tie-ins. Like there are things that we have to do way, way up front before we're ever breaking ground, and they're still doing the drawings. So we explain there's a lot of value there, but then we tell how long it takes to do a bid correctly. To establish a budget and get a solid number and really know everything in the drawings. On average, we're about 70 man hours. And when you pre-construction and attending meetings to really have it dialed in, you can easily hit 100 man hours plus, depending on how long pre-construction is. That's a lot of time to give away for free and not have a project at the end, or for them to decide it's worth going out to bid to multiple other people. And if they do and they want to, that's great. We got compensated for our time and they got a lot of value out of that. But I think that's also why it's very valuable to sit down and meet with your client up front and explain the process and the benefits of when you do pre-construction. You gain a lot more because the project build goes smoother, it goes faster. You're not sitting and waiting for materials. Any changes that you wanted to make because everybody was around the table and you could better understand it when it was on paper, it's a heck of a lot cheaper and faster to change it on paper than it is in person.
Well, what's interesting, Nathan, just some quick math here. I mean, when you talk about the bidding process, I mean, you said easily 7 hours, 70 hours, right? As you're tracking
Yeah.
this at $75, easy math, 5,250, right? The
Mm-hmm.
$100 an hour, if you're paying your people, it's, with burden rates, you're around $7,000. I mean, that's a legitimate cost, 5 to $7,000. If you're doing this across the board, on many projects, I mean, this can be extremely costly. And I've seen kind of some small operators. Let's think about some of our trade partners, same as them, they have to take time from actually being in the field and installing to do bids. They have to take time from the actual install to meet with clients and go through scope and schematics. What's interesting is what I really like that you focus on. You said you have to work with the right people. You have to work with the right design team, architect and builder that get it. Here in Phoenix, I've seen that a majority, not all, but a majority are that way. The architect and designer won't even move to the next step of the contract drawings, right? They won't go to CDs and engineering consultants till builders on, hired essentially. And the reason being is they understand what we're speaking about. The builder knows the pricing. What you don't want to happen is design a project and then the client says, okay, let's send out to 3 people. Surprise, here's where our cost is. It's not anywhere close. Having a builder that's going to track and manage assist in value engineering, right? The stuff could be designed that the builder may say, hey, architect, designer, let's look at this option. This could save some money. This will get within budget. And so it's a very, it's a partnership. And really that's what we need to be successful as builders.
Absolutely. It does need to be a partnership. And, when everybody's on the same page up front, there's just a lot less that goes wrong down the road, a lot less surprises, right? We can ask a question early and upfront on, why Pella versus Windsor. And, you can speak to Pella. We're having that conversation on a project right now. Like, those are the two brands that are on the table. And there's a reason why we're going to probably go with one brand over the other. And it's because the design team and their experience with one product and how it's worked long term with all of their clients. But they can't do what they need to as far as pricing and understanding everything about that window manufacturer without us being involved.
So let me ask you this. In your experience, what have you seen as a difference that separates elite builders from others? Because, as we're trying to market this, and it may be good to understand, why are elite builders in your market, Nathan, including yourself, or my market, what is it that separates them from everybody else? Why are they getting those signature jobs, those trophy projects, in your opinion?
Customer service. It's the experience that the customer gets from day one. There's a lot of talented builders out there. There's a lot of knowledgeable builders out there. And I say that knowing some of the guys on the production side that do these semi-custom productions, and they're doing 70, 80 units a year, and they're doing a great job. And they have some really smart guys, and they're using some really cool product. But the experience is vastly different in the deliverable. We also seek out and pre-qualify our subcontractors slightly differently. We're looking for a couple different things than just the average brick mason. We're looking for something different than the typical framer. We've had multiple interviews on a project we're doing in Summit Creek. We have our go-to framer, and they looked like they were going to be too busy and not able to do the project. And as we were kind of going through and talking to others, we explained what we do with our framing process and how we check framing behind them. And we had two of them flat out say, "We're not doing your work." That's ridiculous. Because they didn't want their walls strung by the GC after they strung it. And, but that's something we're going to do. We're going to pay a little bit more attention to details up front and all the way through the process. And then that's going to be reflected in the customer experience as well, right? We're going to be giving you updates every week of what's taking place. We're using project management software suites that help us communicate with everybody. We want them to feel like they can be reached, but the documentation at the same time. We meet with our clients every week on every project. And, sometimes projects you don't have to meet every week, but there is a weekly touch point, preferably in person, walking the job. It's important to us that takes place.
So I was making some notes as you were walking through this about, the lead builders, and you mentioned relationship with subcontractors. I think that's really powerful, right? The talent, qualification, skill set of your trade partners, subcontractors, relationship with your suppliers is definitely going to set you apart. It was interesting. And you mentioned, the documentation, right? The customer experience, which is huge, right? The customer mapping. And then of course the systems. I was speaking to an architect as well, one of those premier architects in town, and asked him this question, in his experience, because he's been working here a long time and worked on some amazing projects. And in addition to what you mentioned, Nathan, one thing he said, the superintendent. And he said, when I'm working with these really high-end elite builders, their superintendents, their personnel are just unmatched, right? Like, you go in the field, and as an architect, they're thinking framing as they're laying out, survey points, for undergrounds. Like, they're so far ahead. They're scheduling sophistication, knowledge of how to read plans. And he said that's really what gives credibility, and with everything else is seeing just that ability, for the superintendent. And so we have to look internally. Okay, well, do I have the personnel? Do I have the training? Do I have the resources, the systems in place for them, to be successful, to get these signature projects that I'm chasing after?
Yeah, no, I think he's spot on. The people on your team internally, outside of just the trades, make a huge difference. And here's an example. I have our senior superintendent, Dwayne. I hope he sticks around for a lot longer, but he's 67. He's probably getting ready to retire. And it's actually been on my mind. Like, I have to think about, he's going to hang it up soon. And yeah, who's going to be filling that spot? And that really weighs heavily on me. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the game and been building quality projects since the mid 70s. And I mean, he's probably forgotten more than I'll ever learn on certain aspects of construction, but he's an invaluable resource. And there's guys that don't like working with him on our jobs because if you
He's
ask
tough.
him, he's tough. He's not going to let you get away with it. And like, well, he makes us do it right. And it's like, well, then what are you doing on somebody else's project if you're not doing it right? But we have great people that really they like to learn, and I mean that's part of our thing. Like we have an internal bonus structure, and half of your bonus is based on education and learning. Did you learn and train this year? How did you get better? I mean, that there's a lot on that on me too, on making sure that I'm identifying areas that people need to train in. And that's a year-end question that we ask all of our team. What is one skill or piece of knowledge that you want to learn in the coming year? And then, once we have that, it's like, Anthony tells me what he wants to learn, what that skill and piece of knowledge is he's focused on for 2023. Now I know, as not just his boss and employer, but as, friend, if you will, how to guide and steer him and like what modules, whether it's on MT Copeland or LinkedIn Learning, or if there's a seminar I can send him to. Like there are things like that I can help him grow and advance in the areas that he's actually interested in, as well as the areas that he might be lacking and needs to step up and improve.
So with the continuing education, which I know you're big on, I mean, that's a big part of your company and growth and for your personnel. Where did the idea come from? And again, this is essentially not continuing education internally, but externally. You mentioned the Whiteboard Wednesdays, which you do, which I think is a great tagline. Just where that came from, why it's been instituted, and how that's benefited with your social media presence.
Yeah, it came about because I was struggling to figure out what to post. To be honest, it was like, you've probably, I mean, I don't know if you feel like this because you've got Project Blow Your Mind and Iconic Net Zero. You've got all these phenomenal projects out there, but I feel like as we're walking projects, I'm like, gosh, nobody wants to see what we have to share, because projects have these weird lulls and there's so much weird stuff going on. You're like, this isn't cool and it's not interesting. But that's my perspective, because I'm in and around it all day, and that probably isn't true for others. But then I kind of realized, well, what would I want people to know about construction? Like, what do I think it's important for a client to understand? Because we sit in these owner meetings and the architect's like, yeah, cool, I'll send out that ASI. And the client's kind of looking at you like, what's an ASI? Like they don't understand the acronym, or oh, that was on PRO1. Oh, well, what's PRO1? Like some of these things get lost on either a sub or a client, and we just figured, look, let's just put that out there. Let's make sure everybody knows what the terminology is, help other people learn and grow. We've got a young man on our team that he's very, very green. He's very, very new. And part of it comes with the mindset of, I want people to be interested in becoming a builder and going into the trades. And one way we can do that is just to help put the vernacular out there and demystify what building actually is and the parts and pieces that make it up.
I like that you took that angle, because I've seen huge benefits, right, to the social media. I mean, we've been kind of focused on the customer element, right? The education of separating yourself as a commodity, right, and understand the value you bring as a builder, Nathan. But something that's often overlooked is the recruitment, right? Understanding that, hey, this is the brand, here's education. And people may want to say, hey, I want to come work for Bison Group because they're doing commercial, they're doing residential, they have this leadership, they have this organization, continuing education. All these things, these resources that you're offering, again, these are perks, right, to people that are looking for employment. And, for you, may help just coming into the trades, which is something we need right now.
Yeah, no, we're definitely, well below what we need from a skilled trades perspective in our market. And I know nationally, looking across the board, it doesn't seem to be any better. We have more people leaving the industry than are coming into it on an annual basis because people are just aging out. I mean, I look at some of the guys that we worked with and I've had relationships and have been on job sites with for 20 years now. And I'm still like the kid. I'm still the young guy, and I'm not that young anymore. And and some of their kids are in the business and they're starting to take it over. But there's a lot that I'm concerned about. Like our favorite cabinet company, our favorite millwork company, I think the youngest person in there is the finisher in their shop, and they're like 49. Everybody else is in their 50s and 60s. And they just produce something at it's a next level quality, attention to detail, and craftsmanship that has been hard to find in other millwork trades. And there's no one young coming into that company, so it will close its doors at some point in time. And you know, that's unfortunate because there's a huge wealth of knowledge. And I don't know the answer to get more people to come into the trades and understand that, hey, this can be a great line of work. There's a lot of pride and honor in doing what we do. The way we look at it is, I mean, one of the things that drives me is we get to build spaces for people that enjoy, like, this is where they live their lives. This is where they build memories and experience birthdays and weddings. And I mean, we've done funeral homes, and that's a humbling experience, building out a funeral home. And you realize that, hey, this place has to be special. It's got to be done at a certain level, because when you're here, you're not here because it's a great day, but this is where people are going to build memories and experience their life. And you think about that's the spaces that we get to build and create, and that's how they get used. And I think if people can change that paradigm of what a builder is and what a tradesman is, we can get more people interested in it. I have nothing wrong with tech and coding and things like that. My brother's a software engineer. We use, products like Procore and Builder Trend, and, they've really aided a lot of what we do in the tech side. But there's something about the physical, tangible spaces that we actually inhabit and live our lives in.
So what got you into it? When you mentioned, the excitement that you see, especially now in your career, early on, what motivated you to get in construction?
It's in my DNA. My dad's a builder. I grew up on job sites. There's photos of me walking around with homemade tool belts at 3 years old, carrying Senco nailers. And I tried to get out of construction. I wanted to be an architect. I tried to go to school for architecture, and it didn't work. I couldn't sit still long enough. I needed to be out there doing something. But I mean, I've always had a hammer in my hand and a tool belt on my hip. I studied other things in college. I've been fascinated about other subjects, and for whatever reason, every time I tried to leave this industry, it never let me go. It always dragged me back in. Even like, night and weekends during college, I would literally drive off to go back and do, a basement for the weekend to make extra cash. And that's just the way I guess I'm wired. But it's always been fun because I saw that with my dad, right? He was driving around like, oh yeah, we built this and we did that over there. But then realizing, but this is like where people live their lives. This is where they experience the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's something kind of neat and poetic about, we create spaces that people enjoy. It's something that they envisioned in their mind, especially like the custom luxury homes, right? This is like Project Blow Your Mind, for example, that we walked. That's somebody's ultimate vision. And you guys get to turn that vision and that idea into a 3-dimensional reality that's going to be experienced by many generations. Why wouldn't you want to be in construction?
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting that you say it gets to be experienced, right? And so you think about some of the, the happiness and memories that are built, right, in these homes and projects that we work on. For you doing commercial and residential, have you ever seen the focus change internally, maybe where that pendulum goes, right? Am I focused on commercial, residential? Has that changed over the years? Primarily why the continuation of focus on both?
Yeah, no, we have. We've definitely experienced that pendulum's kind of swinging, where we've been a little bit more focused on the commercial at times versus the residential, and vice versa. And part of it's diversification. I was early enough into my career that I remember the dot-com bust. I remember how tough that market got for subcontractors, going, wow, there's not enough money in my account. Like, what are we going to do? No one's calling. And, watching that, going through the whole, 08 debacle and fiasco, and having people say, can I sharpen my pencil any further? Like, back to the whole commodity thing, right? Sharpen your pencil if you want this job. You're a commodity to us now. So I've always kind of been a little bit more risk averse on that. And I cut my teeth early in my professional career after I started wearing my tool belt from residential into the commercial realm. I've always liked commercial. We focus not so much on the ground up, but on the class A higher end tenant improvements. And there's a lot that kind of bleeds between the two. And we definitely find that there's just a trend sometimes where, man, it's killer project after killer project coming after one after another with the same architect and same team that just want you there. And so it's harder to do everything. And then we kind of find that we really love residential. We love residential because it's less transactional, to be honest with you. Like there's more emotion. That's a two-edged sword because it definitely is more emotional. But the reward and the payoff at the end when a client walks in and their home's all done and it's buttoned up and we've got this big bouquet of flowers for them, you can kind of write paid in full, like this that vibe and that emotion they get. And we love the complexity and the creativity that comes in the residential, but we definitely find that there are benefits to being in both markets outside of a hedge from a diversification standpoint. It's difficult because they do operate differently, from building codes to which architects specialize in which subs. Our vendor list is quite extensive because we have subs that only do residential, only do commercial. But the big thing about the commercial side that benefited us on the residential is the paperwork. Commercial is very, very heavy on documentation and paperwork, and you've got to have it dialed in if you're going to be good at it and you're going to be successful at it and you're going to make money at commercial. Like, you've just got to have that dialed in from a risk management standpoint. We'd like the philosophy, keep it simple, but that really helps our residential projects be better.
It's interesting you say the paperwork side, because I have seen, right, and not just from a general contracting perspective, but also a subcontractor and trade partner, trades that are accustomed to working on commercial projects, definitely much more sophisticated when it comes to paperwork, billing, change orders, scheduling. I mean, all these things, right? Because it's a huge part. As you mentioned, it's the residential side is less transactional in the sense it's more emotional, but the commercial side is very transactional, and there's a lot of legal aspects to it. And you really have to have, I's dotted, T's crossed in that market.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a best practice for both, whether you're residential or commercial, to make sure you've got your paperwork and that systems and those processes down. Commercials just help us refine those better. And then that's paid big dividends for us on the residential side because we can deliver a better project experience for our clients with better documentation, which means we're just more forward thinking and less reactionary, which is easy to happen in residential. You can easily get on your heels and a little bit more reactionary on residential if you're not on top of it.
So I know you're a big watch guy. Like, what intrigues you about watches?
Everything. That's a long conversation. But what I love about watches, and I'll qualify that by mechanical watches, right? They're manual wound or automatic. There is an art and a craftsmanship to a well-built watch. And that's not your Casios, and I'm sure I'll get flack for saying that. But the thing about watches, and they've always intrigued me from the sense of they're not a commodity. You can find the commodities that are watches, but then there's watches that people will pay ridiculous amounts of money. There's a watch that comes out from Patek every year, and its retail price is $2.2 million. It's got 20 complications. It is completely mechanical. There's no batteries. It'll go 100 years as long as you just service it. And when you think about the homes that we do and the projects that we do, there's a level of detail and craftsmanship. There are parts of these watches called a bridge that are polished underneath that the only person will ever see it is the watchmaker, the guy that built it. The customer will never know. And I think about that on how we build our houses. The things that get buried in the walls still should be neat and tidy. We're not a fan of debris in the walls and then closing them up. Like, no, it should be clean, neat, tidy. The wiring behind the wall should be neat and tight. It's an attention to detail to every little aspect. So it's just this merge of art and craftsmanship and innovation and technology. And for whatever reason, they've just spoken to me. I love collecting them. I love reading about them and learning about them. And I see a lot of parallels between these watches and what we do as builders in crafting something.
It's interesting because I love the watch example, and you mentioned almost like that was Steve Jobs' obsession, right? With Apple device. What does it look like that no one will ever see? And essentially that care of craftsmanship, right? The bones of it, the quality, the attention to detail. You mentioned long lasting, right? The art, you know, a lot of us can understand the quality in a good, right? In something that, like a watch or a vehicle. And how do you portray that with a home, right? Because so many times you and I are sitting in these conversations where, what's your price per square foot, Nathan? And how many times do you go and you're buying a vehicle and say, well, what's your cost per, square foot, for lack of a better word, right? What's your cost?
Yeah,
It's the same size car. Why is it so much more? Conveying that, educating the public, understanding, and this goes back to, your whiteboard Wednesday and all this content and information you're putting out there so that clients understand that no, it is different, right? The qualification of my superintendents, the qualification of my trade partners, the product that we're delivering, it is different. Getting into building science, it is different. And then I can use these and market them now to find that ideal client, to someone that will actually value that they may not live in their home for 100 years. They're not going to have their watch for 100 years, but they can pass that on to future generations. And there's value in something that'll be sustainable and last the test of time.
absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said.
And so from your side, Nathan, I mean, one thing that probably you struggle with, as do I, like, even though we have content, even though we have these projects, there's still the budget aspect. There's still a cost that goes into these jobs. And, you came down to see the net zero home. And even though we're doing that and there's so much value in it, and the longevity of the home and the health of the home and the energy efficiency and the sustainability, it's still hard that not every client's going to buy in, or that every client can afford it. And that's the reality. And ideally in time, costs come down as, it becomes more prevalent and more of a standard. But it's something I struggle with, right? I mean,
Yeah,
do you have customers that are pushing back on budget, that are pushing back on, hey, Nathan, I think it's great to do this, but here's where I'm at, and how do you kind of dance between those lines?
absolutely. That happens on every project. I mean, I can think of one project in my entire career where they just said, money's not an object. We don't care what it costs. Go get it done. And that's like, so everybody, no matter how big their bank account is, has a budget and has a value aspect to the different parts and pieces of their home. And a lot of times that conversation comes down to, and this is where, back to your cost per square foot, it's something we thought a lot about, actually building a bunch of, like, a whole series of whiteboard Wednesdays on this very topic. You have a budget, and let's just say that budget is $1 million for easy math, and you're going to spend 10% of that on architectural fees and interior design costs. So now you're down to 900. And of that 900, where does it go? Like, what are you trying to maximize for? What are the goals of the project? Do you want a home that's going to be as big as you can get, and you don't care about the aesthetics and you don't care about the fit and finish? Cool. Then let's maximize square footage. But if you care about performance or about quality, then we need to start understanding where on those line items the priorities are first and foremost. If it's a performance, and it's windows are going to be a very expensive thing to change 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road on a remodel. So that's probably a bucket you should spend more on now versus later, where light fixtures are very easy to swap out a year, 5 years, 6 years down the road at a fraction of the cost than do something like windows. But windows add a lot to the aesthetic. It's often overlooked on a home, but it's huge on the performance aspect of the home. And we try to have these conversations during pre-construction with our clients and our architects. Like, tell us what your vision is. What are you maximizing for? If you want the most absolute dynamite, banger kitchen you can possibly get, and that's your big priority, all right, cool. Then let's not spend as much money on other areas of the home, and let's go all in on the cabinets and the appliances, and help them understand inside of their budget what are the values and the priorities to them, because things can get changed. And we know that if you're going to be in a home for 20 years, you're going to remodel it at some point in time. Everyone gets that 7-year itch with their home. I have it in mind right now. So, what's the easy thing to change down the road? And what's the harder thing to change down the road, and where are those values? So that's the conversation that we have with our clients. And then we help them prioritize where that spend is. And sometimes it's the value engineering. It's just not going to fit. They want the performance. We had that on a Park City project last summer. They wanted exterior insulation on the outside of the home. They wanted triple glazed windows that were casement and wood clad, and they wanted all this. And at the end of the day, it couldn't pencil. And part of our job is to be candid with our clients and have that hard conversation. And I've made this mistake in the past, because it's easy to want to root for your client to win and give them everything. Like, we'll try. I think we can get it at this price point. And the reality is, you'll never get it at that price point, but boy, you're going to try. And we spend more time and effort trying to do that. And then it's heartburn and heartache all the way around versus just staying flat out. This is the price. This is the value. And if that doesn't work, then let's go find a different option. And those are the candid, hard conversations sometimes you have to have with your client. But for us, it's understanding what their primary goal and vision is for that project, because the line items are not all equal in priority to our clients.
It's interesting, unfortunately, the appetite we have, from our eyes, our stomach can't handle, very similar to clients' budgets, right? We hear often, champagne taste beer budget, but the reality is that everyone has maybe a comfort, and it could be that they may have the money, but they're looking at this, maybe they don't plan on selling the home, but they still want to be
Mm-hmm.
somewhat wise with their investment, right? Or, where they're at. And so this goes back to early on when you said clients need to have builders involved, because again, they have buckets, as you mentioned, Nathan, where they can put dollars and they can be counseled, and you can help them, highly benefit the success of the project by understand what their priority is, what their goal is, and then putting this together, right? And counseling
Yeah.
them. So let me ask you this outside this, like what drives you? I know you're a super passionate guy. Every time I've been around you, have this high energy. You're very, super intelligent, right? Anyone that's around you have very poignant questions, and there's a deep understanding there. But where does that come from? What is it that drives you day to day?
What drives me day to day is I think I'm content, but I'm never satisfied. I've always I heard this statement a long, long time ago. I think it was in middle school, and it was meant to be like a riddle. What's the biggest room in the world? Room for improvement. And it's kind of always stuck with me. There's always been this drive that, hey, what we did yesterday, we can do better tomorrow. And I'm always curious. I'm always learning. I've always got a stack of books that I'm piling through, a list of podcasts that I'll never get through all of them, even at 2x speed. It's just not going to happen. But wanting to deliver something that hasn't been delivered before in the market, wanting to provide a better experience for our clients than has been. I really do, and hate is a strong word, but I hate that whole like meme that's out there that builders are never honest. They're always over budget. They're always late. Now, unfortunately, the pandemic really didn't help that in any way, shape, or form. But I don't feel that's true of most builders. And I want to do everything I can to change that perception. I want clients to be able to pick up the phone and reach out, because the brand of who you are and the company you've built stands for itself and speaks for itself. If I'm going to use a watch analogy, people know Rolex because it's the king. Its logo's a crown, and that's not, totally by accident. Everyone calls it the king, but it's not the king because it's the best, because there are better made watches. But Rolex annually sells more luxury watches than all of their competitors combined, because they've built a phenomenal brand based on quality, customer experience, and they've executed on that. And people seek it out. I think construction can be the same way. People can seek out the AFTs and the Bison Groups of the world because they've got the reputation of they do a quality project, they do a phenomenal customer experience, and at the end of the day, the brand's so good that when you list your house for sale, if you choose to sell it, it's worth putting who the builder was on the listing, because that adds value. And I look forward to the day, and I think it's years down the road, but that's my moonshot. I want people to be able to list the name of the builder on their MLS listing when they're describing the house, like this was built by the Bison Group, because the Bison Group has a reputation of doing homes that are top notch, they're quality inside and out, even the things that you don't see, and it's going to last. And, I don't think that has to be exclusive to one builder or one brand, but getting real estate listings where, we've seen it in the past. People have chased homes built and purchased old homes because of the architect. Doesn't mean it was built well. Had a cool design, but it may not have been built well. And it may have. But why not care about, when you go to buy a house, on who actually built the house?
I love that. This goes back to the watch thing. If you think about the analogy you gave of, a fine watch, not just the craftsmanship, but also the name, right? There is a name and reputation from the customer experience and how people feel and the quality behind it. So having you on the MLS, essentially is doing that, right? You're building a name for the Bison Group, and that's um, what's attracting people, and essentially one of your goals as a builder. What are some of your challenges as a builder? I mean, we've talked about some here. What is it that keeps you up at night right now? Challenges just as a builder in general, maybe in the business, kind of the direction that you're heading.
I think the biggest challenge is the market's always shifting and changing. And, interest rates have gone up and the market's kind of been a little bit flat. And we've definitely seen how that's impacted some of our clients. They've made different decisions because of, the economic conditions of the last 6 months. We know it's not permanent. And, the thing that probably keeps him at night the most is I've got a team, I've got people, they've got families and, rent to pay and mortgages and things like that. We want to make sure that we're always providing top notch to our clients and that we have enough projects and project revenue to continue to grow our team to support this, and then to make sure that our team can grow. Right, training is expensive. It's not cheap and it's not free, and it comes out of our overhead and profit. But to get better, we have to keep doing it, and that's a big challenge. Of what's coming in 2023. I don't think it's all bad. It's a little different. I think you know I think most of us will be fine getting through it. It's a bit of a challenge, especially on the production start, and finding solid, skilled trade partners. Because, like I said, we got guys that we can see they're getting older, and as we scale and continue to grow and take on more projects, the the tile contractor that we really love to use, they only have so much bandwidth, and if we have too many projects, we don't set them up for success because we got to spread the love a little bit to other tile contractors that are equally qualified, so our clients all have the same, at the end quality. But if I give the same tile guy all the work and he's overloaded because he doesn't have the manpower, now all the schedules suffer, and now he's frustrated because he can't keep up, and that's not fair to him. So, part of it's we have to help our subs grow, but part of that is we need to find more, qualified trade partners in our market that we can, continue to make sure all of our clients are properly taken care of. And that's really probably the biggest part is constantly, hey, how do we educate people? Like, how do we educate people to not see us as a commodity, grow our team, stay busy, and have enough good skilled labor? Those would be the four big buckets that, if anything, keep me up at night and keep me thinking and trying to find solutions to, working through systems and processes. That's just kind of just part of the game. They're always changing. They're always evolving. They're very fluid. They're written, but they need to change as times change.
So what's interesting is you mentioned early on, you talked about the DIY thing and, HGTV. I shouldn't call them out. I guess I should be careful here. But essentially, I mean, there are TV shows, right, in our
Yeah.
industry that essentially there's not given maybe the full context of the story of what things cost or the duration and things that go into it. What's interesting is you had the opportunity to go to construction instruction, right? Mark La Liberté School there in Denver. And tell us about that experience, because you go there and you mentioned, okay, it's one thing to say DIY, manage your own house, but then you realize attending there, the challenges in building, the complexities we deal with, things that can
Mm-hmm.
come back and get us in the long run. How was that experience for you?
It was a fantastic experience. So we took our entire company out there. We felt it was very, very important after we met Mark La Liberté and heard what he had to say at the Contractors Coalition Summit in Nashville last May. And that was one thing we didn't hesitate to do. We're like, hey guys, this is our big annual training. We're going to fly everybody out. We're all going to stay and we're going to do this. And we need to go back for more because there's more modules for us to go do. But at the end of the day, technology's changed. How we build changes. The building codes have changed. In our market, the residential homes are about to go from the 2015 building code to the 2021 building code and the 2021 energy code. It's going to be a kick in the gut to a lot of guys that aren't prepared for that and don't know what's coming. It's going to impact cost and everything. But we're in front of that because everything that Mark La Liberté's team's doing at construction instruction is above and beyond the building code, and it's what we should be doing. It's where we should be going. But as we kind of mentioned earlier, not every client's got the budget or the value mindset that's what matters to them. They want the really cool, Wolf 48-inch range versus an ERV system in their home. And there's you can't say that they're right or they're wrong on that. We know where we're at. I think the big thing was, you look at that, and if you take anybody that was all about the DIY, let's just take the producers from HGTV. I don't think they would do another show if they sat through that course and realized the risk that they take on. The amount of risk that we have in our business from a long-term perspective, for statutes of limitations, for building defects, and all of the different things that go in there, from an air barrier to a vapor barrier to a weather barrier, your HVAC system, your air filtration system. Not you have all your structural. Wow, like it'll make people's heads spin. In fact, Dwayne, who I mentioned, who's 67, right? He's the guy that houses have to breathe. And I asked our team, write up what are the top 5 items you think we should implement like right now, day one, after this. And I got a multi-page report from Dwayne, and it was basically everything. And here's why. I mean, he was true believer and convert after that. And unfortunately, we can't do every project that way because the budgets don't allow, the timing doesn't allow, or the architects don't want to buy into it. I think the great thing about commercial is we saw it got adopted in commercial about 10 years ago on a more building science approach. It's a lot more mainstream in the commercial side. So we've been exposed to it. We see that this life cycle is coming, that it's going to be adopted. The building codes will catch up. But that's the thing I don't think everybody understands. And I haven't figured out how to educate everybody on that yet. The risk that we have as builders from building defects, and how many things can go wrong, and how easily they can go wrong, and how easy it is to make a mistake. That's just not captured or on any Netflix show or cable TV show about doing it yourself, or Instagram.
Well, and this goes back to, ideally, I mean, one of the goals of this podcast, essentially, Nathan, is that help us all write how to run better businesses, whatever that is, and in any industry. But the reality is, whether you're a designer, architect, or builder, we have a ton of risk in this industry. And just building alone, they talk about national averages, builders average like 3%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think about how little that is compared to the risk that we take. And ideally, this is why we should be compensated for bidding, why we should be, educating our clientele on what it costs to build a project and to warranty it, and to be here to take care of it. And, as that tail gets longer, how that follows us, and essentially educating the client why there is the cost there is associated with building. And so ideally, hopefully, that's something that we can all continue to do, which I know I've been striving to do, and I know you are. That's hence the reason we met at the Coalition Summit, and, all the correspondence, since then. Outside of that, Nathan, I know you're super busy building Bison Group, and what you've done commercial residential is pretty outstanding, especially at such a young age. So what do you do for fun?
I like to spend time with my family, and we go on some trips, and the big thing outside of that, I love a good round of golf. It's a little cold up here. It was 15 degrees this morning, so definitely shock to the system after being in Arizona for a couple of days. Jiu-jitsu is a big part of my life. I like getting on the mats. I like trading. For whatever reason, getting smashed and kind of getting beat up on multiple days per week is, I don't know. It helps me. Work seems not so tough afterwards.
That's amazing. So jiu-jitsu, I mean, were you always involved in that, or is this something recent?
Jiu-jitsu has been something in my life for the last couple of years. Growing up, I was in some combat sports, and I did those for 7-8 years. I've done the Kempo thing. I boxed. So it's not that it hasn't been there, but this was a different realm. My daughter's the one that actually said, "Hey, let's go do this." It had been on my mind. It had been something I wanted to do, but it's one more thing that takes time away from the family. And the Bison Group already does that plenty. And so when she said, "Let's go do it," it was like, all right, let's go do this together. And she's getting ready to move on from jiu-jitsu. She's got other intrigues as a 10-year-old would, but the bug bit. And you'll find me at open mats on Sunday mornings, and there a few times during the week, just getting after it.
Well, now I know we shouldn't be picking on you, right? Especially with the skill set you have. So outside of that, what do you have that's upcoming and exciting, Nathan?
For us, we've got our Wolf Creek Ranch project that breaks ground in June. We're working on pre-construction right now. It is an awesome interior design team, an awesome architect. We're super excited for it. Our client is phenomenal. It's a repeat client. This will be our third project for this client. And Wolf Creek Ranch is an area outside of Park City that we've been wanting to put put a project up and plant our flag for quite some time. It's a really, really unique spot and opportunity for us. So we're super excited. And this is one of those homes that's going to be a 100-year home. It's going to be there for a long time. They definitely know where they value different aspects of the building science as well as the aesthetic. So, yeah, this has been a long time coming. We snowshoed to the property to pick site location of the home last January, so a year ago. And so pre-construction does not always happen as fast as everybody thinks it does to get something out of the ground. But it's a really, really cool. It's got a lot of challenges on how to build at 8,000 feet and kind of far away from anything close. So we really have to have our ducks in a row, and we really enjoyed the challenge of working through that process.
Well, when you said snowshoes, I think I'm out. So I'll definitely defer to you on that one. But I'm excited to follow along, Nathan. So where can our listeners find you?
On Instagram, that's probably our primary platform. It's at Bison Group UT, and LinkedIn, we're trying to do a little bit better there, and that's just Nathan Marsala.
Well, that's amazing, Nathan. Well, I can't thank you enough for making time today. Appreciate the friendship, and looking forward to connecting again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brad, for having us on.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.